Hello and welcome to another episode of KARE 11 on the Record. I'm political reporter Danny Spiewak. This week, for the first time since the killing of Renee Good, we sat down one-on-one with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who talked about the ongoing ICE operations that are occurring in his city as the federal government's clash with local officials intensifies. Mayor, thank you for taking a few minutes to sit down with us. We appreciate it. I just want to get right to it. Your city is really locked in an unprecedented battle with the federal government right now. People out there are wondering, what is the path out of this?
Right. The obvious path out of this is the same way that the federal government got in this to begin with. You can have these agents leave. We've got somewhere in the range of 600 police officers in our city, and as of now, they have 3,000 to 4,000 ICE agents and border control. If the goal were safety, we would have many mechanisms to achieve safety working in partnership with the federal government. And by the way, we've done that before. But the goal is not safety. This seems like some form of political retribution or performance, and it is causing chaos on our streets. It is making people less safe. And so the easy antidote here to achieve calm, to achieve a steady approach and to get safety is to have this massive influx of agents in this operation end.
So the Trump administration has given no indication that they'll be pulling agents out anytime soon. What has your communication been like with them, given that they're not giving up on this, it seems?
Right. Well, we have tried to access every channel that we possibly can to both provide a message universally and specifically to the White House and the Trump administration to say, this is not working. If the goal is safety, this does not achieve it here. We, of course, have reached out directly to the White House, but did not hear anything back. And so we are still optimistic, both because we've got a court process that is presently underway. We believe that we can win this litigation. We are hopeful that in the relatively near future we'll have a judicial ruling that says, at least to a certain extent, this operation has got to end.
You're obviously under federal investigation by President Trump's Department of Justice. Are you planning to comply with the subpoena that they issued?
Well, look, I'll leave the litigation strategy up to the attorneys themselves, who are going to be the experts in this, but it should be deeply concerning to everyone in Minneapolis and around the country that elected leaders are being targeted because they disagree with President Trump. That's not how things work in America. Other countries, sure, you have this kind of political retribution where if you're an opponent of the person who's in charge at the federal level, you get nailed. That's not how it should work here. And supposedly the target would be, because I'm engaging in one of the most basic and fundamental responsibilities that I have as mayor, which is to speak on behalf of my constituents.
We saw the vice president, of course, in town in this city this week, and he accused you and other Democratic leaders in Minnesota of not cooperating with federal law enforcement. What is your response to the vice president?
Well, we have cooperated extensively with federal law enforcement when it is about achieving safety. We've worked with the DEA and the ATF, the FBI. We've worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And together, for one example, we successfully drove down crime and shootings on the north side. Due to that work, shootings on the north side are the lowest level on record. So when it's actually about achieving safety, when it's about specifically targeting murderers and rapists and all the people that the federal government likes to talk about, we do work with them. But here's what we won't do. We won't spend a limited amount of time that our officers have hunting down a father who just dropped his kids off at daycare, who's about to go work a 12-hour shift, who happens to be from Ecuador. That guy makes our city a better place. And I don't want our police officers spending time going after him when they could be investigating crime and preventing murders and carjackings from happening. That's what I want the work of our law enforcement to be focused on.
Is it still the policy of your city that police officers in Minneapolis could respond to a federal scene for crowd management, not for the purpose of immigration enforcement, but can they still respond to scenes?
They can respond to scenes. Specifically, our officers go out to keep the peace and to help keep people safe. That is their primary goal. But it's important to note that they can't be everywhere all at once. They've got their regular day-to-day responsibilities that they're supposed to be undertaking. They got to respond to 911 calls. They got to conduct investigations. They got to prevent regular crime from taking place. And simultaneously, when you got these 600 officers and you got 3,000 ICE, obviously there's an imbalance here, and our officers can't do all of it at the same time.
When you reach, or when we reach out to the DOJ and their media line, for responses and comment, they'll often point to your statements from the day of the killing of Renee Good, and they say that they're not allowing the state to be involved in the process of investigating it because they believe that you made a prejudgment. What do you say to them?
Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. First of all, I'm not the state, and so the state and the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is an independent body. I don't direct them. I don't have authority over them. What I am saying is that this investigation should be conducted by a fair and neutral, independent body. Not just the FBI, which, the DOJ, which has clearly already come to a number of conclusions through this federal administration. And I'm not saying I should be investigating it. The BCA, however, has a long history of looking into officer or law enforcement involved instances. They have investigated cases that have both resulted in a charge and a lack thereof. These are police officers and attorneys. These are real experts. And yes, they should be the ones that conduct an investigation.
During the campaign, you had really dismissed the idea of having to potentially arrest a federal agent. Have you reconsidered that? Would you pursue something like that if you felt that a law was violated?
Look, we got to understand what we're talking about in practice here. First, law enforcement officers would have to be on scene whenever it was taking place. And as I've mentioned, they are working all around the city. Second, look, our officers do and have intervened to keep people safe, and we will continue to do so. We will intervene to keep people safe. And at the same time, we've got to just look at the reality of the circumstances that these officers are facing, and I do not want to put people in more danger than they presently are in.
I know the City Council passed the resolution asking the governor for an eviction moratorium. Do you support that call to the governor?
I think there are much better mechanisms than a universal eviction moratorium. I think we should be working with nonprofits and foundations. We should be working directly with landlords to make sure that people are able to get through this very difficult time. There are more scalpel-like instruments that could better enable people to stay in their homes. Having a full-on eviction moratorium does not make as much sense to me.
Are you planning to veto that resolution?
No, it's a resolution. It's a statement. That is the statement that the council wanted to make, and look, I respect it.
When it comes to your tenure, of course, you were in your first term during the murder of George Floyd. How does this crisis compare to what you went through in 2020?
It's completely different. And at the same time, when you go through an emergency or a crisis, you gain experience, you get thicker skin, you understand how to manage as an executive, especially now an executive that actually has the authority to direct. Back then in 2020, we had a dramatically different form of government. We had a system that was set up which essentially had department heads report up to 14 different people, 13 council members and a mayor. Since then, the structure of government has changed. Some call it a strong mayor system. I would call it a regular mayor system. But it is a system that enables us to direct. And to be very clear, we've worked a lot over these last several years to improve emergency management, to run a national incident management structure, to have streamlined communications. We ran practices, we did trainings, and all this work culminated actually in a simulation where we had 70 some odd people from the city go out to Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is the FEMA headquarters for simulations. And we ran a simulation which was nearly identical to what happened the other day when Jake Lang came in. And so, look, any city, any entity can get overwhelmed, but we are incredibly prepared for emergencies as they come up. And I'm so proud of our team here. I mean, we've got communications people and leaders. We've got emergency management and police officers all working with a common goal in mind. And that goal is to keep people safe through this incredibly difficult circumstance.
I want to ask you again about cooperation between local, state, federal government on immigration matters. One of the things you often hear from the Trump administration is that local officials here are not facilitating, people that are in jails and prisons. And I know the DOC has sent a statement responding to that. But when it comes to the Hennepin County Jail, you don't have jurisdiction over it. But would you support the Hennepin County Jail and the Sheriff's Office having more cooperation with ICE?
I think that decisions about the jail should be left up to the sheriff who runs the jail. But I'll tell you what we will do, what we do in Minneapolis. If the federal government has the goal of catching a murderer, then the first question should be, are they a murderer? Not where are they from? If the federal government has the goal of catching a rapist or a drug or human trafficker, the first question should be, are they a rapist? Are they trafficking drugs? If so, you go after them. I don't care where they're from. They could be from Chicago, Minneapolis, they could be from Ecuador or Germany. It doesn't matter. The question that we ask is, are they causing chaos or crime on our streets? To the extent they are, what does it matter where they're from? And we will partner with the federal government on that front. But again, that is different than having this focus be on plucking random people, tearing families apart, discriminating only on the basis of are you Latino or are you Somali, and indiscriminate after that. We will not partner on constitutional violations. We won't partner on, this dragging a pregnant woman through the street or picking up a 5-year-old and detaining him. That's not what our city is about. If this were about violent criminals, there would be really obvious ways where we could work together. This and what we're seeing ain't that.
The vice president, in response to us asking about allegations of racial profiling, said that he would investigate that and they take that to Washington, but he denied that it was a widespread practice. Do you believe him?
No. Look at what's happening. I mean, you've got police officers at this point that are being pulled over, that are off duty because they look like they are Latino or they look like they are Somali. This is not like one individual reported instance. You guys on your program have pointed out numerous instances when people have been targeted that are United States citizens. Our public works staff have been targeted. You got 4 of them out there. They're all filling potholes or whatever. The 3 that look like maybe they're a person of color, they get stopped. They get asked for their IDs or their passports. The white guy, they don't ask anything. So are they discriminating based on race? What other explanation would you have?
How has this impacted the operations of the city just as a whole?
Our city is resilient. We are strong. We've got approximately 4,000 amazing city employees that are holding tough through the most difficult of circumstances, and they're doing their jobs with pride. We're the government here that doesn't shut down. We keep responding, we keep acting, we provide city services with excellence, and by the way, there's a ton of stuff that we got to do, whether it's filling potholes or plowing the streets, responding to 911 calls, things that are completely separate from whatever's going on with this mass deployment. And so, yeah, they're doing that, working at the same time. Of course, there's a strain. We're meeting very regularly to prepare for what's to come. And our hope, obviously, is that this ends very soon. And we're doing a number of different channels. We're running a number of different mechanisms to hopefully end it. And that's litigation. That's reaching out, that's trying to find areas where there is in fact agreement, and we've cited this repeatedly. I mean, if you listen to what J.D. Vance was saying, some of it sounded like he was spouting off my talking points. Some of it sounded like he wanted to focus on violent criminals, which of course we would, but that's not what they're doing.
What have your conversations been like with Governor Walz? You've held separate availabilities, haven't appeared together throughout this.
Yeah, no, we've had extensive communication back and forth with Governor Walz and his team. They've been very helpful. They have provided additional assistance from the State Patrol. We've worked together in terms of the communication. Now, the governments themselves between the city and the state are working hand in hand.
My last question is, what are you going to do as the mayor of this city if the federal government remains here with this ICE presence for months on end?
Well, look, I'm not going to predict the future as to how we will handle individual situations that haven't had yet, but our city stands rock solid. We stand rock solid in support of the people who we love, and I'll tell you, I'm inspired. I am inspired by the tens of thousands of people that have peacefully protested, inspired by people that are, escorting their neighbors to get groceries that are otherwise terrified to go outside. I'm inspired by people that are, taking a watch outside of a daycare and just looking out for each other. And that in and of itself is so beautifully Minneapolis. This notion of I care about my neighbors who I love, and I'm going to stand up for them, that's something special.
Welcome back. The top elected Republican in Minnesota state government is House Speaker Lisa Demuth. This week, we spoke with Demuth about the ongoing ICE operations in Minnesota and the run she's making for Minnesota governor. We are joined now by Minnesota House Speaker Lisa Demuth. Speaker Demuth, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate you taking some time today.
Thank you, Danny. It's good to be with you.
Speaker, I want to start with the vice presidential visit. I know you met with Vice President Vance this week. Just what was the nature of your discussion with him?
Sure. I was really grateful to be invited to meet with the vice president along with other community leaders. As you saw, the vice president did a press conference with Customs and Border Patrol and security investigation. A lot of what you heard in that press conference was some of what we spoke about behind, outside of the media or in the meeting that was had. Really, the intent, though, when you look at it, is the vice president is, along with following the orders from President Trump to make sure that our country is safe, and specifically the work here in Minnesota, an area and an idea is to de-escalate what we've been seeing. But what that's going to take is going to take the desire by both Mayor Frey and Governor Walz to work along with ICE and the work that is going on. The other thing I want to mention, Danny, is it's important when people hear that police departments may be working with ICE or prevented from working with ICE. It's very important to understand they are not asked, local police are not asked to do the work of ICE. All they're asked to do is maintain that public safety that all of us in every community in Minnesota desire. That's traffic flow, crowd control, not preventing people that are protesting peacefully, but just doing that extra measure of safety. We clearly in our state have seen that has not been the case, that police departments, for whatever reason, are not able to give that normal public safety that we all depend on so much.
When it comes to allegations of racial profiling, even by local law enforcement leaders here, have you been supportive of the way the Trump administration has carried out the operations in Minnesota?
I can't speak directly to how the operations are being carried out, but I will tell you if there are proven cases of racial profiling, those that are doing the work do want to hear about that. That is not their intent. But the other thing to keep in mind is if we had community leaders, state leaders that were willing to work along with the efforts that are being made here in Minnesota, that wouldn't be the case. It's just as simple as if there are people that are here illegally and have been arrested for criminal activity. If those detainer requests were granted so that when the people are released, they could be turned over to ICE when they leave, that would help keep things a lot safer. Or if there's a last known address of a violent criminal that is here illegally, that would at least be shared so ICE would know where that person may be and be able to take that person into custody. That is the cooperation that is needed that would help things be done safely, efficiently, and also prevent this unknowing in different parts of our state. We really need cooperation from our state leaders, along with the federal partners that are just here doing their jobs.
We heard from the Minnesota Department of Corrections issued a scathing statement accusing the federal government of even saying potentially propaganda, saying they are cooperating with ICE as they always have. What do you make of that response from the DOC?
We have heard that the DOC is cooperating, and again, that's not doing the job of ICE. It's just making sure that the communication as needed is flowing. What we're hearing differently, though, is county jails or those in the counties are being less than cooperative, specifically in our largest counties.
Do you believe the Minnesota BCA has a role in investigating, or should have a role in investigating, the death of Renee Good?
You know, this is a federal case, and so it has been turned over to the feds for that investigation. That will take place, and that is what we know at this point.
I want to switch gears because obviously I'm speaking to you as the House Speaker, but also you're a candidate for governor. We know that Senator Klobuchar is potentially, about to enter the race here. What do you make of a potential matchup with Senator Klobuchar? She has won statewide elections in the Senate by wide margins over the years.
What we've seen with the voters in Minnesota, where they sent back a tie to the House of Representatives in 2024, they were clearly telling us that one-party Democrat control was not what they wanted. All of the Democrats from the state of Minnesota, whether they've served in the state legislature or if they've served in Washington, D.C., have stayed lockstep with Governor Walz over everything. That is the excessive fraud that has gone on. That's our failing test scores here in Minnesota. That is the spending of the surplus and blowing up our state budget to unreasonable amounts. Every Democrat from the state of Minnesota has supported Governor Walz when he announced his reelection, when he was running for VP. So there is no difference between whoever, whether it's Senator Klobuchar or another Democrat here in the state of Minnesota. There is no difference. This is going to be a Tim Walz third term, and Minnesotans need and deserve better. They need a leader that is principled, that will get this state back on the right track. That is why I am running for governor.
When it comes to running on the Republican side, would you welcome an endorsement from President Trump in this race?
I would. I have already always received both the endorsement for my legislative seat when I've run, and so I welcome seeking and winning that endorsement here from our state delegates. But then, if there would be an endorsement from President Trump, I would absolutely welcome that.
And I'll ask you this final question. Looking ahead to the session, how do you plan to work with the new House leader on the DFL side, Zach Stevenson, of course, taking over for the late Melissa Hortman, who I know you enjoyed a very good relationship across the aisle with?
I did, yes. And, when we look at returning to session February 17th this year, there is a lot of opportunity to continue the good work that Melissa Hortman and I did together, given the tie. The tie was only the second time in state history, but we were able to get it done. We allowed our co-chairs to negotiate from the very beginning. Everything had to be bipartisan. And then when we were negotiating, Melissa Hortman and I both had our Ways and Means chairs in the room with the other leaders and the governor. And so that was now Leader Stevenson. My Ways and Means chair is Chair Paul Torkelson. Because Leader Stevenson was in those rooms, I think he saw firsthand how we were able to get things done. Leader Stevenson and I have had a couple of meetings already, and we will continue that going forward. And I have no doubt that we will do the best that we can, representing both of our caucuses, but doing the work for the people of Minnesota as we serve in the House.
Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 On the Record. Remember, you can watch all episodes, including previous ones, on demand on KARE 11 Plus and YouTube, and streaming every Sunday.